I'm sure you've heard the phrase, put your mask on for helping others, especially like on an airplane. But that's a phrase that I think about when I'm thinking about the federal minimum wage. What I mean by that is I want you to picture for a second that all 50 states were alive and people, and they were all on a plane flight, and during this plane flight, there was a cabin decompression, and the masks come down just like how they say they would. What I think of is that the person, Mr. California, would be able to get his mask on, but there might be other people like Alabama or South Carolina that are having a much harder time. What I mean by this is that a state like California has a state minimum wage, while states like Alabama and South Carolina don't. So I see it as they're able, getting the mask on is able to protect themselves from the very low federal minimum wage. Those states like Alabama and South Carolina are trying to live off a federal minimum wage set in 2009 with a 2025 cost of living. So, we are in the lucky and morally just position of having the mask on and being able to help those around us. Simply put, by the Economic Policy Institute, in April of 2025, the raising the federal minimum wage is critical to protecting workers, especially those in the South. So let's dust off the facts on this multi-decade-old policy, and I will take you through the problems as to raising the federal minimum wage, the root causes behind them, and I'll give you a couple solutions as to how we can work to better this issue. So, firstly, the problems. I'd like to introduce two of the main ones behind this issue. The first one is that the minimum wage is stagnant. It's been stagnant since 2009. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics confirmed that since then, inflation has raised costs 50%. So this means that the minimum wage is worth way less than it was when it was set in 2009 because costs have only increased, which means conditions for people earning that minimum wage are that much less. The second main problem is that it's unaffordable to live in some states at this point. With an expectation in some states where the federal minimum wage is the minimum that you have to work 70 to 80 hours just to afford housing costs and to get by and to live. So that's completely unsustainable because people will burn out very fast at that rate. Even just as a backup point, imagine getting sick, but you can't go to work, and yet you're expected to work 70, 80 hours a week just to get by. Something I noted was that Bankrate's 2025 annual emergency savings report said that currently 1 in 4 Americans have no emergency savings. So those people at that minimum wage it will be disastrous for them to even just get a cold. So now on to the root causes behind these major problems. So the first cause, there's two major ones, is politics and the lack of state minimums. First one, politics, has been an issue especially since Reagan, and especially with major corporations fighting any kind of legislation to raise the minimum wage at every step of the way, which is a huge issue because corporations have a lot of money and a lot of sway in Washington. But to truly understand the federal minimum wage issue, I do want to explain to you the FLSA, the Fair Labor and Standards Act, which was set by President Roosevelt during the Great Depression. He set it to set the federal minimum wage at a time when the country needed it most. But as the Economic Policy Institute in August 23 put it, Raising the Wage Act, the Raise the Wage Act of 2023 was a policy that was put forth in Congress to raise the federal minimum wage, but it was subsequently shot down. What I want you to understand from that is that the fight to raise it is constant and ongoing, but to raise it at all, it has to be passed by politicians. It's not something automatic as a response to inflation or anything like that, although maybe it should be. Second cause is the lack of state minimums, which currently there's 20 states without any state minimum wage, or their state minimum wage is equal to the federal minimum wage, which is actually a ton. That's almost half the states in the country, and that's really where the problem lies. So let's take New Hampshire for an example, a state that does have no federal minimum wage, or state minimum wage equal to the federal. Redfin News in 2025 said that a New Hampshire worker in one of New Hampshire's cities earning $7.25 an hour would need to work a staggering 224 hours a week to afford the median apartment price there every month. That is so far beyond the realm of reality, it's completely inconceivable. Yet, for some people, like those workers in New Hampshire cities, it is reality. So now that we've gone over the foundation by figuring out the problems and we've built atop it with the root causes, let's solidify our understanding together by going over some solutions to tackle this federal minimum wage issue. We'll start with a broad scale solution and then we'll narrow our scope. So for that broader solution, it is important that we fight for reform at every single step of the way, the federal, the state, and the local levels. And I know that's just jargon, so what I really mean by that is that we have to use our vote in every single way. We have to vote in the midterm elections in Congress to get people to support the federal minimum wage. And whenever local and state elections come up, we also need to vote for people that are going to push better minimum wage regulations. Because, believe it or not, minimum wage can even change just from city to city. So using your vote at every step of the way is incredibly important. My personal solution to this issue is that I want you to, next time you get a paycheck, whether it's physical or you're looking at it on your phone and it's a California paycheck and maybe you're getting paid minimum wage, $17 an hour, I want you to look at it and understand that it is an absolute privilege that we are in the position to get paid as much as we do, because it is not a guarantee. It is not a guarantee by the federal government. And I want you to understand that because there is people who are getting their paychecks and looking at it and getting paid a third of what we're paying, yet doing an incredible amount of work or living in cities that they just can't afford. So please take that paycheck and understand that it is such a privilege and how lucky we are. And I do want to make it tangible for you and leave you with this. The remarks by in Texas Observer, a Texas Observer article from September 25th of this year, where a domestic health worker who goes by the initials of BO said that it really takes a toll on you, and every time you're trying to take a nap, you're already going back to work. This is because she works 90 hours a week at $7.25 an hour just to get as a healthcare worker, and she's responsible for around-the-clock care of 6 elderly patients, which is a ton of work for almost no money, and barely being able to afford life. So, I just want you to remember she is real. So, we've gone over the what, the why, and the how behind the federal minimum wage issue. Gone over what the problems are, why they exist, and how we're gonna move forward together to better the country. So today, I've been happy to break down this issue with you, happy to cover all the facts and all the points, but what I really want you to take out of this and truly hold near and dear to your heart is that our minimum wage, our California state minimum wage, is a privilege. It is not a guarantee, but let's work to make it that way. Thank you.